Welcome to Tim's TV. We're going to give you an update on what happened today. It is July 12th, 2018. You witnessed what I would call obstruction of justice by the Democrats in the House committee hearing today. 5 minutes into the first question, they called for the end of the hearing. They interrupted. They did everything they could to resist and obstruct. We've spent a year and a half to get Mr. Strzok up in front of a committee under oath on camera. Okay, great. This guy was in charge of the Hillary Clinton investigation. He found that 33,000 emails being deleted 10 days after they were subpoenaed was legal. He found that smashing subpoenaed cell phones with a hammer 10 days after they were subpoenaed is legal. Removing the memory card from a cell phone and then handing it back to the authorities is legal. He found that setting up an illegal server is legal. He found that we have a thing called the Archives Act. After Richard Nixon, Watergate, and him destroying the tapes and not cooperating, Congress passed what's called the Archives Act. It requires that all official government business be done and saved on government backup. We're talking the 1970s here. That's been modernized. So all government emails have to be done on government servers so they can be archived, backed up, and if Congress wants to look at them, they can look at them. It was completely designed to stop anybody in the government from doing what Richard Nixon did. As a side note, Hillary Clinton was on the Democratic committee that was initially investigating Watergate. The Democrats fired her for being unethical because she wrote a memo claiming that the President of the United States cannot have an attorney. Why? Because Hillary Clinton didn't like him and she wanted to prosecute him, and having his own attorney would get in the way. He couldn't have a government attorney and he couldn't have a private attorney. Think about that. The President of the United States could not hire his own attorney because Hillary didn't like him. Now, let's fast forward a couple of decades. Hillary Clinton, who was above the law in 1972 on the Watergate Committee, which she got fired for, now lost the election. She was above the law in the fact that she didn't have to follow the Archives Act, which was passed because of Watergate. So she could run her own servers, so she could keep her own dirty laundry out of Congress. It allowed her to delete 33,000 emails, destroy all of her text messages. You're talking about her emails. Nobody's ever talked about her text messages because, well, she smashed the cell phones. The text messages are poof, gone. Now, while Hillary Clinton committed 33,000 acts of obstruction of justice, they're framing President Trump for a Russian conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Why? Because he fired the FBI director that let her get away with it. Now, Trump did give Jim Comey a month or two because, hey, the guy helped him win the election, let's be honest. Turns out it wasn't because he was trying to help Trump. It was because he's that arrogant and he's that incompetent. In addition, every time Trump met with Jim Comey, everything leaked to the New York Times. Trump's not stupid. I have multiple meetings with you. The next day or two, everything we say ends up in the New York Times. You're the leaker. You're fired. You're out of here. Now, the idea that we should impeach Donald Trump for firing somebody, the guy that became famous for firing people, every American who voted for Donald Trump knew him from The Apprentice. You're fired. So he fired the head of the FBI, a position and a power that he has a full constitutional authority to do. The idea that we were going to impeach the guy for doing the thing we elected him to do, we all wanted to hear him say, "You're fired." He fired a guy. That's not obstruction of justice. The investigation has continued. If firing Jim Comey ended the investigation, you may have a point. But firing Jim Comey did not lead to the end of the investigation. So there is no obstruction of justice. Hillary committed 33,000 acts of felony obstruction of justice, not charged with a single one. Trump hasn't done any obstruction of justice, and all they talk about is obstruction of justice. Now, let's take a look at bias. We all remember the O.J. Simpson case where Officer Furman used the N-word multiple times. He admitted it under oath, and that came off as biased, and they couldn't find a biased police officer to convict the black man. Absolutely, I understand the decision. But let's look at Mr. Strzok said, F Trump, we need an insurance policy. F Trump. I could smell the Trump supporters when I walked into Walmart. Just really dehumanizing, like a Nazi would. Stoke is like a Nazi. He dehumanizes people he doesn't agree with. The dehumanizing of your political opponents is the path to Auschwitz. The Democrats have dehumanized anyone that disagrees with them. You're a racist. You're a bigot. You're a homophobe. You're a redneck. You're a racist. That is a form of dehumanization. You don't have to be right. Your opponent just has to be dehumanized. Hitler wasn't right, but he managed to dehumanize the Jews. He managed to dehumanize the communists. He dehumanized everybody that disagreed with him. Therefore, you could do whatever you wanted to them because they were subhuman. The Democrats are trying to subhumanize Trump supporters. They're trying to subhuman or dehumanize Republicans. That's why Republicans are racist, bigot, homophobes. Strzok believes that anybody that disagrees with him or voted against Hillary is a subhuman. And you can do whatever you want to a subhuman because they're not human. Auschwitz happened because Hitler was allowed to dehumanize and subhumanize his political opponents. When you hear a Republican called a racist, bigot, a homophobe, when you hear Donald Trump called a racist, a bigot, an idiot, a fool, when you see that big balloon over London that makes Trump as a baby, they're trying to dehumanize Donald Trump and dehumanize all of his supporters. That is the threat to our democracy. The FBI does not get to pick the President of the United States. We do not have FBI endorsed candidates and non-FBI endorsed candidates. You're running for political office, you win or you lose. The FBI doesn't get to pick. What they're currently doing would make J. Edgar Hoover blush. Not that he wouldn't support it, but the idea that the FBI is this great moral institution. Mr. Strzok is a married man who is having an affair with a married employee. They're both FBI employees, they're both married, and they're openly having an affair. Think about that for a minute. He's a married man having an affair with a co-worker who is also married. If you have a problem with sexual harassment, how can the head or the deputy director of the FBI have a consensual sexual relationship with any FBI employee under him? It's pure sexual harassment. He's married, she's married. All these text messages are coming out because he's having an affair with her. He's screwing her while he's married and she works for him. Let's talk about sexual harassment for a second. That is pure sexual harassment. He's up here in the FBI. She is down here. They cannot have a consensual sexual relationship. They should both be terminated. She should possibly keep her job. He should be terminated because of the sexual relationship he had with a subordinate. The Democrats don't bring it up. You know who commits sexual harassment is a Republican. Democrats don't commit sexual harassment because the sexual harassment charge is a political allegation. So when you look at Strzok and realize that he was the deputy director of the FBI in charge of the Clinton investigation while he was sleeping with his girlfriend who also worked on the Clinton investigation as a subordinate, he's married, she's married, and she transferred over to the Russian investigation to get Trump. Once again, he's here, she's here. He's always on top, she's always on bottom. That's not an equal relationship. I'm Tim. This is Tim's TV. That's the news of the day. The thing the media is covering up is the sexual harassment and the sexual hostile environment at the FBI. Thank you. If you like what I say, whether you hate me, whether you love me, it's the best thing going today. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell your friends about me, because I am the most honest person on the internet. Woo!